Let me tell you something right now. There's power in solitude. There's strength in walking your own path. Society might tell you that a man needs someone by his side to be whole, that a man without a woman, without a girlfriend, is somehow incomplete. But I'm here to tell you that's a lie. A man who lives alone, he is not weak. He is not lost. He is building himself. See, this is your season of growth. Solitude is often misunderstood. People associate being alone with loneliness, as if a man without a girlfriend is somehow incomplete, as if he is missing a vital piece of himself. But let me tell you something. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. A man who embraces solitude is a man who understands the power within himself. He is not waiting for someone to come along and give him purpose. He is not dependent on external validation. Instead, he uses this time to build his foundation, to sharpen his mind, to strengthen his will, and to walk his own path without distraction. This world is filled with noise. Everywhere you turn, someone has an opinion about how you should live your life. Family, friends, social media, movies. Everyone is telling you that you need someone by your side to be happy, that your value is tied to your relationship status. But if you listen closely, if you step back from the noise and sit in silence, you will realize something important. You are enough. You don't need someone else to complete you. You don't need constant companionship to be whole. Everything you need is already within you. It just takes time, patience, and discipline to uncover it. When a man chooses to live alone, without the distractions of a romantic relationship, he gains something most people will never experience: complete control over his own time, his own energy, his own focus. There is no one demanding his attention, no one pulling him in different directions, no obligations that take away from his personal growth. He has the freedom to wake up every morning and ask himself one powerful question: what do I want to achieve today? This is where real growth happens, in silence, in solitude. In the moments when no one is watching, when no one is there to praise you or push you forward, this is when you truly discover what you are made of. Because let's be honest, most men only move when someone else is pushing them. They only work hard when they're trying to impress someone. They only focus when they feel pressure from the outside. But a man who lives alone, a man who embraces solitude, he moves because he has something inside him that refuses to stay still. He doesn't need motivation from the outside world. He doesn't need a relationship to give his life meaning. His purpose is his own, and that makes him unstoppable. Think about the greatest minds, the greatest leaders, the greatest warriors in history. They didn't become great by surrounding themselves with distractions. They didn't waste time chasing meaningless relationships. They spent years in isolation, training, learning, preparing. They understood that before you can lead others, you must first lead yourself. Before you can build a great life, you must first master your own mind. Solitude is where discipline is forged. It's easy to rely on someone else for comfort, for support, for motivation. But when you are alone, you have no choice but to develop inner strength. You learn to control your emotions instead of letting them control you. You learn to push yourself instead of waiting for someone else to push you. You learn to be your own source of strength, and that is something no one can take away from you. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself forever. It doesn't mean you reject relationships completely. It means you take this time to become the best version of yourself before bringing someone else into your world. Because let's be real, a weak man in a relationship is still a weak man. If you don't have discipline, if you don't have self-respect, if you don't have purpose, being with someone won't fix that. It will only expose it. So use this time wisely. Work on your mind, read, study, learn. Work on your body, train, eat right, stay healthy. Work on your spirit, meditate, pray, reflect. Work on your finances, build, invest, secure your future, because a man who has built himself in solitude is a man who will never be shaken by the world. When you walk through life with this kind of strength, people will notice. They will see the way you carry yourself. They will see the confidence in your step, the fire in your eyes. And when the right person comes along, they won't be meeting a man who is searching for himself. They will be meeting a man who knows who he is, who knows what he wants, who doesn't need validation because he already knows his worth. That is the power of solitude. That is the strength of a man who lives alone, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. And when the time is right, when the right woman enters his life, he will not be a man who needs her. He will be a man who is ready for her. In a world full of distractions, a man without a girlfriend has a unique advantage. He has no external obligations pulling him away from his mission, no late-night arguments draining his energy, no constant need to check his phone, respond to texts, or worry about how someone else perceives him. He has one responsibility, and that is to himself. This is the time when he can operate with complete focus, channeling every ounce of his energy into his purpose, his goals, and his self-improvement. Most men don't realize how much time and mental space they sacrifice in relationships. It's not just the time spent with a partner, it's the emotional investment, the energy spent maintaining the relationship, and the compromises that come with it. When a man is in a relationship, his priorities are naturally divided. But when he is alone, he has a rare opportunity to give his undivided attention to his ambitions. He can wake up every morning and decide exactly what he wants to do, without anyone else's expectations shaping his day. He can pour all his effort into his career, his personal development, his fitness, his financial success, without guilt, without interruptions, without distractions. This period of solitude is a blessing, but only if a man uses it wisely. Many men waste this time chasing temporary pleasures, parties, meaningless flings, endless hours scrolling on their phones. Because they feel like they're missing something. They believe that if they're not in a relationship, they need to fill that void with something else. But that's a weak mindset. A man who understands the value of this time will not look for distractions. He will look for growth. He will recognize that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build something greater than himself. Success requires sacrifice. It demands long hours, relentless discipline, and an obsession with progress. The men who achieve greatness are the ones who know how to focus. They are the ones who cut out unnecessary distractions and commit themselves fully to their mission. When you look at the most successful men in history, whether in business, sports, or any other field, you'll see a pattern. They weren't spending their early years chasing relationships. They were chasing excellence. They were working when others were resting. They were mastering their craft while others were seeking validation. They knew that once they built something great, everything else, including the right relationships, would come naturally. A man without a girlfriend has the opportunity to develop an unstoppable work ethic. He can stay up late learning new skills, rise early to train his body and mind, and spend his days building his empire. He doesn't have to worry about explaining his choices to anyone. He doesn't have to slow down to accommodate someone else's pace. He can move at full speed with laser-sharp focus, because his only priority is his mission. But focus is not just about work. It's also about self-mastery. A man in his solitude learns how to control his emotions, how to stay disciplined, how to find peace in being alone. Too many men rely on relationships for emotional stability, using them as a crutch rather than developing their own inner strength. But a man who is truly focused on his purpose understands that his emotions are his responsibility. He doesn't need validation from someone else to feel complete. He doesn't seek comfort in relationships. He finds it in his progress, in his growth, in his achievements. There will always be people who tell a man that he needs to settle down, that he needs to find someone and build a relationship. But those same people won't be there when he's struggling to pay bills because he never built his financial foundation. They won't be there when he realizes he wasted years on relationships that led nowhere instead of investing in himself. They won't be there when he looks back with regret, wishing he had used his time differently. That's why a man must be ruthless in protecting his focus. He must understand that this is his time to build, his time to elevate, his time to create the life he truly wants before bringing someone else into it. Discipline is the key. It's easy to get distracted, to fall into the trap of short-term pleasure, to convince yourself that you can balance everything. But true success requires full commitment. It requires the ability to say no to anything that does not align with your long-term vision. A man who is serious about his future will not waste his energy chasing relationships when he has not yet built a foundation for himself. He will not dilute his focus by dividing his attention between his goals and unnecessary distractions. He will stay locked in, knowing that every sacrifice he makes now will pay off tenfold in the future. And when that future comes, when he has built something truly valuable, when he has developed himself into a strong, disciplined, successful man, then and only then will he be in a position to choose the right partner. Not out of desperation, not out of loneliness, but from a place of strength. Because by then, he will not need anyone to complete him. He will already be whole. And that is the kind of man who attracts the best in life, not just in relationships, but in every aspect of his existence. Self-mastery is the foundation of true success. A man who lives alone without the distractions of a relationship has a unique opportunity to develop himself in ways that others cannot. This is not a period of emptiness. It is a period of transformation. It is a time to sharpen the mind, discipline the body, and cultivate an unshakable spirit. When a man is alone, he is left with himself. And in that solitude, he must confront his weaknesses, his fears, and his limitations. Most people run from this. They seek out relationships to escape the difficult process of self-discovery. But a man who embraces solitude understands that before he can lead, before he can achieve greatness, he must first conquer himself. Self-mastery begins with the mind. Everything a man achieves in life starts as a thought, a belief, a vision. But the mind is also where most men lose the battle. Negative thoughts, self-doubt, fear of failure, these are the enemies that destroy potential before it even has a chance to grow. A man who is serious about his growth will train his mind with the same intensity that a warrior trains his body. He will read, he will learn, he will expose himself to knowledge that expands his understanding of the world. He will cut out distractions, limit pointless entertainment, and focus on feeding his brain with information that makes him stronger. He will not allow himself to be controlled by emotions because he knows that emotions are temporary, but discipline lasts forever. A man without discipline is a man without direction. It is easy to live without discipline when there is no clear purpose. That is why so many men drift through life chasing pleasure instead of progress. But a man who is focused on self-mastery will create structure in his life. He will wake up early, train his body, sharpen his mind, and attack each day with intention. He will not wait for motivation to strike. He will act regardless of how he feels, because he understands that success is not built on feelings, it is built on habits, on discipline, on relentless effort.
This is the path. It is difficult, it is demanding, but it is the only way. A man must stop waiting, stop complaining, and start acting. He must take responsibility for his condition, organize his life, and become the master of his own fate. Only then will he be truly ready for anything, including love. A man often hears that confidence is the key to attracting women, to success, to commanding respect. But confidence without competence is hollow. It is not enough to simply believe in yourself if there is nothing substantial backing that belief. A man cannot trick the world into thinking he is valuable. He must become valuable. He must cultivate real skills, real discipline, real capability. When a man lacks competence, any confidence he projects is nothing more than arrogance or wishful thinking. True confidence is not something that can be faked. It is the natural byproduct of competence, of knowing deep down that you are prepared for life's challenges, that you have something to offer, that you are worthy not because you say so, but because your actions prove it. A man who is alone without a girlfriend might wonder why he struggles to attract the kind of relationship he desires. He might think that if only he carried himself with more confidence, he would be more appealing. And while confidence does play a role, it is secondary to competence. Women are drawn to men who are capable of handling adversity, capable of providing stability, capable of standing firm in the face of difficulty. If a man's life is disorganized, if he has no ambition, if he lacks discipline, then all the confidence in the world will not make up for it. Competence is built through struggle. It is forged through effort, through the willingness to step outside of one's comfort zone and engage in the difficult process of self-improvement. It means developing skills that make a man useful not just to himself, but to others. A man who is competent can solve problems. He can provide value in the workplace, in relationships, in his community. He is not merely waiting for life to hand him what he desires. He is actively working to earn it. One of the greatest mistakes a man can make is to assume that competence will come to him naturally without deliberate effort. The truth is that every man must go through a period of intense personal development where he pushes himself beyond his current limits. This means acquiring knowledge, learning practical skills, developing physical strength, and cultivating emotional resilience. A man who avoids these challenges remains weak, not because he was destined to be weak, but because he chose to remain that way. A competent man is self-reliant. He does not look to others to solve his problems. If he is financially struggling, he does not blame society. He finds ways to increase his earning potential. If he is physically unfit, he does not make excuses, he starts training. If he is socially awkward, he does not withdraw into isolation. He learns how to communicate effectively. He understands that no one is coming to save him, that it is his responsibility to carve his own path. Women respect and admire competence because it signals security and stability. A man who is competent does not panic under pressure. He does not fall apart when things go wrong. He has the ability to adapt, to think critically, to make decisions that benefit himself and those around him. This is why women are drawn to men who have mastered something, who have demonstrated that they can take on responsibility and handle it well. It is not about being perfect. It is about proving that you can navigate the difficulties of life without crumbling. Developing competence requires a shift in mindset. A man must move away from passive entertainment and instead engage in active learning, reading, studying, practicing a craft. These are the activities that separate men who thrive from those who stagnate. It is easy to waste time on meaningless distractions to avoid the discomfort of growth. But every hour spent avoiding personal development is an hour that could have been used to become a stronger, more capable version of oneself. A man must also cultivate competence in his emotional life. He must learn how to regulate his emotions, how to handle stress, how to remain composed under pressure. An emotionally unstable man is unreliable. He reacts impulsively, allows his feelings to control him, and ultimately becomes a burden rather than an asset. Emotional competence is just as important as intellectual or physical competence. A man who cannot control his emotions cannot lead, cannot inspire, and cannot attract the kind of relationship he desires. Competence also breeds independence. A man who has built himself up does not need external validation. He does not seek approval from others because he knows his worth is rooted in his abilities, in his achievements, in his capacity to contribute to the world. This kind of man does not beg for attention, does not plead for love. He naturally draws people to him because he is someone of substance. The process of developing competence is lifelong. There is no final destination where a man can say, I have arrived. The world is constantly changing and new challenges will always arise. A man who remains stagnant, who believes he has nothing left to learn, will eventually fall behind. Growth must be continuous. He must always seek to improve, to refine his skills, to expand his understanding of the world. There will be failures along the way. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, times when progress feels slow, but these are not reasons to quit. They are tests of character. A competent man does not give up at the first sign of difficulty. He persists. He adapts. He learns from his mistakes and moves forward with greater wisdom. In the end, competence is what separates men who are truly confident from those who are merely pretending. A man who has mastered himself, who has developed real skills, who has proven to himself that he can handle life's challenges, this is the man who will succeed, not just in relationships, but in every aspect of his life. And when he reaches that level, he will realize that he no longer needs to chase anything because competence attracts, and a competent man is never truly alone. A man who finds himself alone, without a girlfriend, often feels the weight of solitude pressing down on him. He may look at couples walking hand in hand, sharing moments of joy, and wonder if he is missing out on something essential. He may sit in silence at night, questioning whether his life lacks meaning because he has no one beside him. Loneliness, if left unchecked, can consume a man, leading him down a path of despair, self-doubt, and bitterness. But there is a fundamental distinction that must be made. Loneliness is suffering without purpose, while solitude is the disciplined journey toward self-improvement. A man must learn to embrace solitude, to see it not as a punishment, but as an opportunity for profound transformation. Loneliness stems from an unfulfilled need for connection. It is a state of longing, of looking outward and wishing that something or someone would fill the emptiness inside. It often comes with a sense of powerlessness, a belief that happiness is dependent on external circumstances. A lonely man waits. He waits for the right person to enter his life, for companionship to alleviate his discomfort, for validation to soothe his insecurities. But waiting is passive, and passivity breeds weakness. A man who remains idle in his loneliness will only deepen his suffering, reinforcing the idea that he is incomplete without someone else. Solitude, on the other hand, is active. It is chosen, embraced, and utilized. It is the recognition that time alone is not a curse, but a rare and valuable gift. It is the understanding that before a man can engage in a meaningful relationship with another, he must first cultivate a meaningful relationship with himself. Solitude is the period in which a man strengthens his mind, hones his skills, sharpens his character, and builds a life worth living, whether or not someone else eventually shares it with him. A man in solitude has the freedom to shape himself without distraction. He is not bound by the demands of another person's expectations, nor is he required to compromise his ambitions for the sake of maintaining a relationship. This is the time to develop competence, to master a craft, to pursue knowledge, to refine one's body and mind. Many men view being single as a waiting period, a limbo in which they simply exist until they are chosen by a woman. But this is entirely the wrong perspective. Being alone is the ideal time to construct a foundation of strength, discipline, and purpose, a foundation that will determine the quality of any future relationships. A man who embraces solitude does not feel the need to constantly seek validation. He does not rely on others to make him feel important, worthy, or loved. He becomes self-sufficient, capable of providing his own sense of fulfillment. This is incredibly powerful because when a man reaches this state, he no longer chases relationships out of desperation. He does not settle for someone just to avoid being alone. Instead, he sets high standards, not only for himself, but for anyone he allows into his life. Women in particular can sense the difference between a man who is comfortable in his solitude and a man who is afraid of it. A man who fears being alone will radiate insecurity. He will grasp at attention, overextend himself to impress, and ultimately undermine his own value by placing his worth in the hands of others. But a man who has learned to master solitude carries himself with quiet confidence. He is not in a hurry. He does not force connections. He chooses who he allows into his life rather than hoping to be chosen. And paradoxically, this very trait, this ability to stand firm in one's independence, makes him infinitely more attractive. There is a reason why monks retreat into solitude to seek enlightenment. There is a reason why great thinkers, warriors, and leaders throughout history have spent periods of their lives in isolation. It is because solitude is where a man meets himself, stripped of distractions, forced to confront his weaknesses, and given the chance to strengthen them. It is in solitude that a man learns who he truly is, beyond the noise of societal expectations, beyond the influence of others. And once a man has faced himself in the silence, once he has taken full responsibility for his life, he emerges with a clarity of purpose that cannot be easily shaken. This does not mean that relationships are unnecessary or unimportant. A strong relationship, when it comes, can be one of life's greatest rewards. But a relationship should be an addition to a fulfilled life, not the foundation of it. A man who depends on a relationship for his happiness is walking on unstable ground. If the relationship ends, so does his sense of purpose. But a man who has already built a fulfilling life on his own remains solid, regardless of who enters or exits it. He does not lose himself in a relationship because he never needed one to begin with. The key to transforming loneliness into solitude is simple but demanding. Fill the empty spaces with growth. If a man sits alone in his room, doing nothing but scrolling through social media, numbing himself with distractions, and waiting for something to change, he will suffer. But if he spends that same time reading, training, learning, creating, improving, his solitude will be a source of power, not pain. He will look forward to his time alone because he will see it as the arena in which he sharpens himself into a stronger, wiser, more capable man. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is what happens when a man has not yet learned how to stand on his own. Solitude is what happens when he masters it. The man who learns to thrive in solitude will never truly be alone because he will carry within him a sense of purpose that fills every room he walks into. And when the time comes that he does choose to share his life with someone, he will do so, not out of need, but out of strength. A man who lives alone without a girlfriend may at times feel that his existence lacks significance. He may wonder what the purpose of his struggle is, why he works so hard, why he pushes himself if there is no one to share his achievements with. He might fall into the trap of thinking that life is meant only to be lived for someone else, that his effort is meaningless unless recognized by a romantic partner, that this is a dangerous and limiting mindset because it places the value of a man's life in the hands of others rather than within himself. A man must seek purpose beyond relationships, beyond external validation, beyond fleeting pleasures. He must dedicate himself to something greater, to a cause, to mastery, to an ideal that transcends his own immediate desires. Without purpose, a man drifts. He wakes up each day with no real direction, no true ambition, no long-term vision guiding his actions. He fills his time with distractions, with shallow entertainment, with temporary pleasures that mask the deep dissatisfaction of a life without meaning. And when he is alone, that emptiness becomes unbearable. This is why so many men desperately seek relationships, not out of love, not out of genuine connection, but out of a need to escape themselves. They believe that a girlfriend will give them purpose, that a relationship will provide the motivation they lack. But this is an illusion. A relationship should be an addition to a meaningful life, not its foundation. A man must first build himself before he invites someone else into his world. He must develop his mind, his body, his discipline. He must choose a path that demands his effort and attention, whether it be in his career, his craft, his personal philosophy, or his contribution to society. The pursuit of excellence must become his driving force, not the pursuit of validation from others. If a man relies on external approval for his sense of self-worth, he will always be at the mercy of circumstances outside his control. But if his purpose is internal, if it is rooted in becoming the best version of himself, then he becomes unstoppable. Great men throughout history were not driven by relationships alone. They were driven by a mission. They saw something greater than themselves, something worth dedicating their lives to. Whether it was building, leading, creating, or discovering, their purpose gave them strength. And ironically, it was this unwavering dedication to a higher calling that made them so compelling to others. A man who is consumed by purpose does not beg for attention, he commands it. He does not chase relationships, yet they naturally come to him, drawn by the sheer force of his ambition and determination. When a man lacks purpose, he suffers. He falls into bad habits, into depression, into addiction, into a cycle of meaninglessness. He fills the void with cheap pleasures, excessive entertainment, mindless social media scrolling, substance abuse, or endless hours of escapism. But none of these things will ever make him feel whole. They are temporary anesthetics, numbing the deeper pain of a life without direction. And when a man exists in this state, he becomes weak, mentally, physically, emotionally. He becomes passive, waiting for something to happen to him rather than making things happen for himself. Purpose is not something that is handed to a man. It is something he chooses. It is something he must create for himself through discipline and action. He must ask himself, what am I building? What am I contributing? What am I striving for? If he has no answer to these questions, then his first mission is to find one. This does not mean he must immediately have all the answers, but he must begin the process of searching, of testing himself, of stepping outside his comfort zone to discover what ignites his passion, what challenges him to grow. For some, purpose is found in their profession, becoming a master in their field, excelling beyond expectation. For others, it is in creating, writing, painting, building, inventing. For some, it is found in leadership, in guiding others, in making an impact on their community. And for others, it is in the pursuit of knowledge, in the relentless desire to understand the world and themselves on a deeper level. There is no single correct answer. But there is one universal truth. A man without purpose will suffer, and a man with purpose will thrive. A man must also recognize that purpose is not found in comfort. It is found in struggle, in the pursuit of something difficult, something that demands sacrifice. Too many men avoid hardship, seeking the path of least resistance. But purpose is forged through resilience, through the willingness to push forward even when it is painful. A man must challenge himself daily, physically, mentally, emotionally. He must push his limits in the gym, in his studies, in his craft, in his work, because every time he overcomes resistance, he strengthens himself. And a man who is constantly improving is a man who will never feel aimless. It is a tragic mistake to think that life only begins when a man finds a partner. Life has already begun. The clock is already ticking. Time is already passing, and every moment wasted in waiting for love to give life meaning is a moment that could have been spent in becoming something greater. Women do not complete a man. A job does not complete a man. Wealth does not complete a man. What completes a man is his commitment to self-mastery, to growth, to contribution, to leaving behind a legacy of strength and wisdom. A man who has purpose does not fear being alone. He does not look at his solitude as a prison, but as a training ground. He does not feel the need to constantly be surrounded by others because he is comfortable in his own company, knowing that every day he spends in disciplined effort is a day that brings him closer to greatness. And when the time comes that he does enter a relationship, he will do so from a position of strength, bringing value rather than seeking it, offering stability rather than craving it, leading rather than following. A weak man waits for meaning to find him. A strong man creates it. This is the fundamental difference between those who spend their lives wishing for more and those who build something extraordinary. A man without purpose is merely existing. A man with purpose is truly alive. A man who lives alone without a girlfriend is not broken, nor is he incomplete. His value is not determined by whether or not he is in a relationship, but by the man he chooses to become. In the face of solitude, he has two choices: to let it weaken him or to let it forge him into something greater. If he spends his time in self-pity, waiting for external validation, he will remain stagnant, dependent, and unfulfilled. But if he embraces his solitude as a time for transformation, he will emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever before. Confidence without competence is empty. A man must build real skills, real strength, and real resilience to command respect and to stand firm in the world. He must cultivate discipline, develop his mind and body, and become self-reliant rather than seeking someone else to complete him. He must master the art of solitude, not as a prison, but as an opportunity for growth. If he fears being alone, he is not yet the man he is meant to be. But if he thrives in his solitude, he will attract people naturally, not out of need, but because he is a man of value. Most importantly, he must dedicate himself to a higher purpose, something beyond fleeting desires, something that demands his effort and commitment. A man without purpose is lost, but a man driven by meaning is unstoppable. And when the time comes that he does enter a relationship, he will do so from a position of strength, not desperation. He will not seek love to fill a void. He will have already built a life so full, so meaningful, that love will be a complement to it, not the foundation. A weak man waits for life to give him purpose. A strong man creates it. The path forward is clear. Stand up straight, take responsibility, and build yourself into the kind of man who does not chase validation, but instead commands respect. Because at the end of the day, the greatest relationship a man will ever have is the one he builds with himself. And that relationship must be unshakable.